Hi there, welcome to my YouTube channel. If you are accessing my video for the first time, don't forget to subscribe the channel and hit the bell icon so that you get notified whenever new video will be uploaded. So in today's video, we will cover second part of the chapter, The Portrait of a Lady from class 11 CBSE. So in the first part of the chapter, we have learned how grandmother and grandson's friendship got broke up because they went to the city, and the author got an admission in English school in the city where grandma was not able to go with him to the school because every day he used to go to school by school bus. While she sat in the veranda breaking the bread into little bits, hundreds of the little birds collected around her, creating a very table bedlam of chirping. So here grandma used to feed the birds and she used to break the breads into pieces in front of the house for sparrow. So all these birds would come and create a lot of noise when she used to feed them. So the birds collected all around her and would create a lot of noise. Some came and perched on her legs, others on her shoulders, some even sat on her head. So when grandma used to feed the sparrow, they came in, sat on her legs, and some on her shoulder, and other even on her head. She smiled but never showed them away. She was very happy with the birds, and she spent a lot of time with them at veranda. So she never showed them away. That means she never blew them up. It used to be the happiest half hour of the day for her. So author is saying here that it used to be the happiest day for her when she used to spend time with feeding birds and would feel happy. When I decided to go abroad for further studies, I was sure my grandmother would be upset. So author is saying that when he decided to go abroad after his college for further studies, he was sure that his grandmother would upset and would feel disappointed because she will not be able to talk or to see him anymore. I would be away for 5 years, and at her age, one could never tell, but my grandmother could. So he was planning to go abroad for 5 years, and that was such a long time as his grandmother was so old, and he thought when he will come back from abroad, his grandmother probably will not be alive. She was not even sentimental. So here author is saying his grandmother was not really sentimental. That means she was not worried or tensed about going far away from her for 5 years. She came to leave me at the railway station but did not talk or show any emotion. So here author is saying as his grandmother was so affectionate towards him and she came to leave him at railway station but she did not talk or show any emotion. That means she even uttered a single word and didn't show any emotion. That means she was very strong lady despite of knowing that her grandson leaving her for 5 years, but she never showed any emotion on her face. Her lips moved in prayer, her mind was lost in prayer. She was busy in prayer and her mind was lost in prayer. That means she was continuously keeping herself into the prayers. Her fingers were busy telling the beads of her rosary. So here author is saying grandma's finger was so busy in moving rosary which she used to carry and telling the prayer. Silently she kissed my forehead, and when I left I cherished the moist imprint as perhaps the last sign of physical contact between us, but that was not so. So grandma kissed her forehead when he was about to leave, and he felt very happy, and he felt that perhaps that was the last physical contact between us. That means that was the only moment when we saw or met with each other or met with grandmother, and he was not certain that he would be able to see her again because she was a very old age woman. But that was not so. That means he saw his grandmother, as he was thinking that he would not be able to see his grandmother. After 5 years, I came back home and was met by her at the station. She did not look a day older. So here author is saying when he came back after finishing his studies from the abroad, he saw grandmother at the railway station and she was looking a day older. That means she was looking the same age as 5 years earlier. She still had no time for words, and while she clasped me in her arms, I could hear her reciting her prayers. So here author is saying when he met again to the grandmother, she still had not time for words, and that means she was busy in her prayer when she hugged him, and he could hear that she is still reciting her prayers. Even on the first day of my arrival, her happiest moments were with her sparrows, whom she fed longer and with frivolous remarks. So when he reached home, he spent one day and he noticed that grandma is happy to see me, but she was too happy while feeding the sparrows, as she used to feed sparrows with frivolous rebucks. That means Curtis has checked on the sparrows. That means she talked to them while feeding sparrows. So in the evening, a change came over. She did not pray. So here author is saying in the evening he noticed that she did not pray, and in that evening he noticed a change on her, that in the evening she did not pray and she used to do the prayers in the evening. So that was the strange thing which he noticed. She collected the women of the neighborhood, got an old drum and started to sing. So here author is saying that evening she collected the women of the neighborhood, and that means she called numbers of women from the neighborhood and got an old drum and started singing. That means she started singing along with them. For several hours she thumbed the sagging skin of the dilapidated drum and sang of the homecoming of warriors. So for many hours she was thumping the sagging skin of the dilapidated drum. That means it was very old fashioned drum and damaged, which she was thumping from her fingers, and she was beating the drum while singing with others, and she was singing a song, homecoming of warriors. So that this is a kind of patriotic song. We had to persuade her to stop to avoid overstraining. That was the first time since I had known her that she did not pray. So here author is saying that we had to persuade her to stop to avoid overstraining. That means avoid taking unnecessary stress, and that was the time when he had known her that she did not pray. That means that was the first time he saw that she was busy in singing with other women, and she did not pray for a long time in a day. The next morning she was taken ill. It was a mild fever, and the doctor told us that it would go. So in the next morning, she got ill, and she was taken ill. That means she got sick, and it was a low fever, and the doctor told them that it would go. That means she will get well soon. So it was just a mild fever. Grandmother thought differently. She told us that her end was near. So here author is saying that my grandmother thought differently, and she told us that her end was near. That means she knew she is about to die, or she is going to die. She said that since only a few hours before the close of the last chapter of her life, she had omitted to pray, she was not going to waste any more time talking to us. So here he said that his grandmother said, I forgot to pray for some moment in my life. So I'm going to talk. I'm not going to talk. That means I'm going to pray and don't waste my time to talk before lose of the last chapter of my life. We protested, but she ignored our protests. She lay peacefully in bed praying and telling her beads. So here author is saying that we try to make her understand that is not a time to pray and you have to take some rest. But she ignored our protest. That means she ignored everything, whatever they spoken to her, and she lay down in bed peacefully and started praying and chanting God with her beads. Even before we could suspect, her lips stopped moving and rosary fell from her lifeless finger. So here author is saying that before we could suspect, her lips stopped. That means even before we could anything, she got died and her lips stopped and the rosary fell from her lifeless fingers. That means she was praying to God while lying in a bed, but suddenly rosary fell from her finger and they understood that she is no more. A peaceful pallor spread on her face and we knew that she was dead. So he is saying that when she died, a peaceful pallor spread on her face. That means her face became pale and we knew that she was dead. So finally they got to know that she was. We lifted her off the bed and, as is customary, laid her on the ground and covered her with a red shroud. So they lifted her off the bed. That means they removed her body from the bed and lied down her on the ground, and then they covered her body with red shroud. Shroud means a kind of red clothes that made specifically for covering dead bodies. After a few hours of mourning, we left her alone to make arrangements for funeral. So here author is saying few after of mourning, that means crying for somebody who is expired, and then after they left her alone and went outside for making funeral arrangements. So in the evening we went to her room with a crude stretcher to take her to be cremated. So after making funeral arrangements, they went to her room with a crude stretcher. That means it's a kind of stretcher made by the bamboo and other wood that take her to be cremated. The sun was setting and had lit her room and veranda with a blaze of golden light. We stopped halfway in the courtyard. So it was evening and sun was setting and there was a blaze of golden light. That means sun was about to set and blaze of golden light was all over her room and veranda, and we stopped halfway in the courtyard. That means something was there. That's why they stopped halfway in the courtyard. All over the veranda and her room, right up to where she lay dead and stiff wrapped in the red shroud, thousands of sparrows sat scattered on the floor. So here author is saying when they were going to take her body, they had to cross courtyard and then inside the room, but they stopped because there were thousands of birds covered with veranda and in her room where her body was wrapped in the red shroud, and all the birds were sitting nearby her very quietly, very silently. So there was no chirping. We felt sorry for the birds and my mother fetched some bread for them. So author is saying that there was no chirping. That means birds were sitting very silently and we felt sorry for them, and he said my mother took some bread and he started feeding the sparrow as they were sitting very quietly. She broke into the little crumbs the way my grandmother used to and threw it to them. So here Singh's mother broke up the bread into pieces, broke up the bread into the pieces and threw it to them as his grandmother used to do. The sparrow took no notice of the bread. When we carried my grandmother's corpse off, they flew away quietly. So when the Kushman Singh's mother threw the pieces of the bread to the sparrow, they did not notice of the bread. That means they did not go for bread to pick up, but when they carried their grandmother's dead body, they flew away quietly. That was the strange thing had happened there. That birds are also feeling the birds were also feeling sad for grandmother and flew from them very silently. Next morning, the sweeper swept the bread crumbs into the dustbin. So, next morning, the sweeper swept the bread crumbs into the dustbin. That means the birds did not pick up a single piece of bread. So, we can understand that how the birds were attached to the grandma's emotions and they were a part of the funeral and they were sad and they sat there and flew away from there very quietly, very silently. So here we can understand or here we can feel how beautiful Kushwant Singh wrote the story, A Portrait of a Lady, and how he tells through the story how beautiful was she as a person, because she always spreading peace and calmness all over around, and she never felt that she is not good looking and be married. So she was very kind human being as she loved animals, birds, and as we have seen in the story how she used to feed street dogs and sparrows, and she was also religious lady. So these are the main characteristics which shows that the grandma was humble and kind personality. So I hope you like the lesson. For more productive videos, do subscribe my channel, hit the bell icon so that you get notified whenever new video will be uploaded. So thank you so much for watching. Stay safe, stay healthy.